So you just saw a juicy induction clip on Instagram. Now you want an intake on your car. There are tons of options, all ranging in price. From this budget enclosed filter carbon fiber intake all the way to the Mac Daddy full carbon airbox. So today we're gonna answer the question, does more money mean more better? So this is our $100 intake made by Ray Sturman. It was initially designed for E30 swaps. Usually people put in E36 engines, but it can be used in a lot of other applications. It's a cool universal style intake with a pod filter on the inside and this carbon fiber enclosed heat shield. And then you get a dryer hose you can utilize at the end to route to where the coolest air is from. Much better than running an open pod filter, also known as a hot air intake. Then we have our middle of the road intake design. This is an Eventuri intake that costs $1,000 on this E46 M3. Much more expensive than the previous one, but with that extra money comes a lot of extra improvements. This intake is designed specifically for this car, and it grabs air from various places and channels it directly into the engine. Now, I'm not qualified enough to explain how an Eventuri effect works, but in short, it makes a great sound and it's supposed to make you more horsepower. And lastly, we have the Mac Daddy of E46 M3 intakes. This is a BMW CSL style intake made by Turner. This is a slightly modified version of the original BMW CSL intake used on the E46 M3 CSL. This is supposed to be the best intake design for this car. It gets rid of the entire plenum, has its own custom airbox that's designed to route air in the correct way to the engine. And of course, it makes it much louder. But at 25 times the cost, there is certainly a price penalty to it, and there is a bit of an installation required and a tune. But on this particular car with an exhaust and a tune, it's making approximately 40 to 50 more horsepower, which is a very healthy bump over stock. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take both of these cars on the road and we're going to install that intake on this car when we're done with it and compare all of them and see, like we said at the start of the video, does more money, more better? Is it worth spending your extra money on the extra intake?
Okay, you gotta put the brake, remember? There. Now you have to redo it because you tried.
I remember how to use an SMG now.
Yeah, it's goofy.
Oh, I forgot how mean this induction noise was. So we have our buddy Steven with us. We drove this car, oh, was that a couple of years ago now?
It's been a while, yeah.
Yeah, it's almost coming up on 2 years. That's crazy. And I was like a little kid in a candy store. I was giddy the whole time because this car, the induction noise, is perfect. I mean, the E46 M3 already has a great induction noise, but this car specifically, oh, this Eventuri intake. Okay, so this intake. So you remember when you bought this car, it didn't have a stock intake, but it had like some other Canon setup, correct?
Really, yeah, some really great. And like one of the bolts and strips was flopping around. It was horrible.
Ah, that's terrible. Yeah. So what if you made this intake? The induction noise is definitely better, right?
It actually surprisingly is, even despite the K&N being like an open filter setup. You'd think it'd be really loud, and this sounds closer to a CSL than I've heard. It's closest to a CSL I've heard from any other like E46 style intake.
Yeah, exactly. The induction noise, like, it's $1,000. It's a lot for an intake, but it does make a difference.
Yeah, I think it's worth it.
And I've driven one of these with a stock intake, and they're really quiet. They still do sing, like once you get up close to 8, but this really is a huge difference. Sounds beautiful when you open it up. So the S54, as a lot of you may or may not know, has IGBs from the factory. It already inherently has a great setup for a great induction noise. Such a glorious sound out of the intake. So I think this has been a pretty good taste for this intake. It really does sing once you get closer to that 8,000 mark. Ooh, rocks.
Lots of rocks.
very loud. I almost felt like the Eventuri one was more crisp. This one's more just like raw in your face induction noise. Creates a very full experience. Honestly, that's really the best way I can describe the sound. Almost like as if you were just closer to the engine. It's very cool.
Sort of a throaty sound.
Yeah, very throaty. So you told me keep the revs over 3.
Yep.
Oh yeah, throttle response below 3 is. Brakes are incredible.
Even the stock calipers are really great.
You feel that extra power up top.
Oh yeah, anything over like 5,000, you're throwing you back in the seat.
Wow.
It's pretty crazy.
It's quick. Yeah, so the car with this tune, it seems very comfortable. Even like a little above 3 is okay.
Yeah, basically it's like 2,200 to 2,600 is some big stumbling, but that's just part of this tune. You can accelerate through that, but you can't drive at that RPM.
Right, so the one I guess issue I would say with an intake like this is you're completely changing the factory design. So this is running what's called an alpha end tune, which means it does not have a MAF anymore. So the engine doesn't have that information, so you have to run like basically a default map that the car just goes, okay, based on this airflow and I think intake air temperature,
Yeah.
or based on intake air temperature and RPM, this is what we're running, which is sort of good enough, but you sort of have to calibrate it based on temperature or urine conditions.
There's some downside for the pure drivability of it.
Yeah, it's like race car technology.
Yes.
You're fully changing the setup from stock. You feel it up top though, holy
Oh, yeah.
smokes.
Between 5,500 and 5,800.
It's fine.
It's already way quieter. So initial impressions with this intake, to be honest, it does not go well on the E46 M3. So yeah, he's laughing.
There's many problems.
There's many problems. So first of all, something that we just realized is that the stock airbox has the MAF in it. So the little cylinder thing we're using, that like the MAF housing, it's that way on other BMWs. So I assumed it was factory in this car, but it's not. It's part of the Eventuri kit. So you can run this intake, you have to spend $1,000 in the
Buy
Eventuri.
the Eventuri first, then you can run this intake.
Yeah. Also, the fitment is hard. The where it's pulling air from, the intake, is right up against the headlight. And when we started taking off, it was actually extremely juddery and like smooth. The ECU has to readapt to considerably less airflow.
No airflow whatsoever.
That is pertaining specifically to this car. So yeah, don't run it on E46 M3, but you know, we're here.
Well,
so
there's a solution. You bore the headlight out. You do that headlight intake thing, which we have a buddy who did.
yes, if you do a headlight delete, or like you have an intake in the headlight, it would actually be perfect because the inlet would be directly where the headlight is shooting air in from.
That also obliterates your budget.
Not your money budget, at least your time budget.
Your time and effort.
Your time and effort. Okay, there's a little stumble. It's still figuring itself out.
It's so much better.
Definitely slower and quieter.
Yeah.
And actually, something that Steven said earlier that is actually a good point is this kind of proves that if you have the wrong intake setup, you can actually lose horsepower. if you don't run something that's made for the car, or it doesn't have to be made for the car, it just has to be a good setup, right? The setup is not well optimized for this car. The inlet is on the headlight.
Yeah.
Like there's air coming up to it from the Eventuri like ducting, but like it doesn't matter because it just can't get airflow.
Yeah.
No, it still goes all right. I don't think you've lost that much power, but it just not as smooth. It's just not. No, you can tell the drivability is a little worse, for sure.
Oh god.
You felt that.
Oh, it's so bad. Oh, it's definitely slower, dude. Oh, it's super slow. Oh my god. And it's quiet as hell. So it's quiet, and we're definitely down. Like,
It does have. So to answer the question, does more money mean more better? Well, of course it does. Yes, it does mean more better. Now, the better question is the extra money worth it? What is the best value? And I think we both agree, probably the Eventuri. I think the Eventuri is really the best balance of both worlds. Drivability, this and that. I would tell 90% of people to buy that one for this car, something middle of the road. Now, the E46 M3 is a particular case because intake setups in this car range widely. If you did a proper headlight delete, you made it proper, I think it would work. The Turner box was noticeably quicker than the Eventuri and definitely this intake, but there is a little bit of a cost to doing that. Ignoring money, just even drivability cost, you need to tune, you lose more power down low, it's a little stumblier, but on the track, it is the best setup. And honestly, I was kind of blown away by how much it felt like a turbo car and how it just surges as you get higher and higher into the rev range. And a final note on that, I did think the Eventuri had my favorite sound. It was crisper. The Turner box, the CSL style, was louder, but I think the Eventuri just had that crisper sound, and it was a really nice blend. I liked it. With that said, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this intake comparison. Look forward in the future for the full POV with this car and the M3 track car. But take care, and we'll see you in the next one.
Feels like I've been doing